Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kari, and today I'm going to be talking about 8 books under 200 pages that you absolutely have to read. When books are under 200 pages, the author has to do a lot with not a lot to work with. Honestly, I've read a lot of books under 200 pages where the author doesn't accomplish much of anything because of the limitation on the page count, but these books, the authors have mastered the art of creating a complete story in so few pages. So I have a lot of genres in this list. I think there's something for everybody. I have literary fiction, horror, nonfiction, and even classics on this list. And a fair few of them are translated as well, so if you're into reading translated fiction, I got you. So with all that said, let's get started. First on my list, I have Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, and this is in translation from the Japanese. So this book is about a young woman named Kiko, and as the title suggests, she works at a convenience store. She's worked at this convenience store for a really long time, and she takes her job extremely seriously, and she's seen so many other workers cycle in and out of working at this convenience store, and she's worked there way longer than any of the managers. So we follow Kiko as she becomes friends with these different cycles of people who come to work at the convenience store with her, and we start to see how these other people at the store are questioning her, saying, why don't you have a husband? Why don't you have any kids? Why are you so obsessed with working at this place? Like, don't you want something more in life? Like, why is this all you aspire for? It's kind of weird that you care so much about this stupid job. Something that made me love this book so much is one of the underlying themes of the story is about these societal expectations put onto women, that basically a woman isn't complete unless she has a husband. She's not complete if she doesn't have kids. And so that's a huge theme of this story. This is actually one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. Next, we have The Nursery by Szilvia Molnar. This one follows a woman right after she gives birth to her first baby and really examines her postpartum psychological state. She talks a lot about how she's been disillusioned to what motherhood even is and what she's experiencing right now. No one has ever told her that this is what motherhood is too, and questioning herself, what does it even mean to be a mom? And how can I even keep my own personal identity now that I have this being that I have to take care of and give my entire life force to? But it also really examines her psychological descent into kind of like a postpartum psychosis almost. And that brings me to my next recommendation, which is Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper. These two books are very similar. Now, I love The Yellow Wallpaper. This is a classic, and it's kind of like autofiction because Charlotte Perkins Gilman was diagnosed with hysteria and put on the rest cure, which was a very common diagnosis for women at this time. And she wrote this as kind of a warning against the rest cure to show people how much damage it can do, because this story really documents her spiral into psychosis. She's literally going crazy because of the rest cure that she's been put on. A lot of people think that this is just like a little haunted house story, and that's fine, but it's way more interesting if you do a little bit of research into Charlotte Perkins Gilman and you understand how this is actually a critique on the rest cure and diagnosing women with hysteria. So I think that these two books really work in tandem with each other, because while this narrator is not technically put on the rest cure, we see her spiral because of her postpartum state, and that's exactly what's happening here. This woman at the very beginning of the story, she just had a baby, and so we can infer that she's just having postpartum depression, but because the doctors at this time didn't understand postpartum depression, they think that she's crazy. So these two stories really work hand in hand together, and I would recommend them both. Next, we have Paradise Rot by Hval, and this is translated from the Norwegian. This story follows Jo, who has just gone off to university, and she's trying to find some place to live. She finally finds a place to live with this other young woman, and this young woman, she lives in a really bizarre like warehouse kind of, but Jo is just happy to have some place to live because she doesn't have a lot of money, so she's just gonna take what she can get. But as the story progresses, things start to get weirder and weirder with this roommate and where they live. I read this book in one sitting, and honestly, it just felt like a fever dream. If you like weird books that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, I would definitely recommend this one. I just read this not that long ago, and I'm already looking forward to rereading it because, like I said, it was just a fever dream. Like, so much happened in so little time, and I just need to reread it to appreciate its weirdness and uniqueness. Next is Happening by Annie Ernaux, and this is translated from the French. This one is actually nonfiction, and it's about the author herself. Annie Ernaux is actually a really celebrated author here in France, and this is probably one of her most famous books. This is about how in the early 1960s, when Annie Ernaux is in her early 20s, and she comes to find out that she's gotten pregnant from a one-night stand. It talks a lot about how she felt a lot of shame, and she felt like she couldn't go to anybody to figure out what to do, because at this time in France, abortion was illegal. So if you appreciate reading about women's rights, I would definitely recommend this one. It really gives you a lot to think about. Next, we have Boulder by Eva Baltasar, and this is translated from the Catalan. This one follows a woman nicknamed Boulder, and she works as a chef on boats. She doesn't have a lot of stability in her life because she's always working on new boats, traveling all the time, but then one day she meets this woman, Samsa, and Boulder decides that she's ready to give up her nomadic lifestyle to move to Reykjavik with Samsa because she just just got a job there. And so already that turns Boulder's life upside down. But the big sticking point is that Samsa wants to have a baby and Boulder isn't so sure about having a baby. So this is a really interesting examination of motherhood and deciding if you even want to be a mother. I read this last year because it was shortlisted for the International Booker, and I would definitely recommend. Speaking of the International Booker, we have The Details by Genberg, and this is translated from the Swedish. So this one has been longlisted for this year's International Booker Prize. This one follows a woman who is suffering from a really bad fever at the beginning of the book, and it prompts her to start thinking about and reminiscing about certain people in her past. And it's called The Details because she's remembering the little details of her life with these different people. But what really struck me about this book is that it's written beautifully, and that's all thanks to the translator, Kira Josephson. She did an amazing job because the writing is just beautiful. If you enjoy books where not a lot of plot happens, but you really want to get into the writing and character study, I would definitely recommend this one. And next we have In the Miso Soup by Ryo Murakami, and this is translated from the Japanese. I've talked about this one a lot on my channel, but just to give you a little refresher about what it's about, it follows Kenji, who is a nightlife guide in Tokyo. Basically, tourists hire him to take them around the seedier side of Tokyo nightlife. And this story follows Kenji when he's hired by Frank, this American, and Kenji starts to wonder what Frank is really after in Tokyo. This book is very weird and at sometimes kind of graphic, but it's done so well, and I still think about this book all the time. All right, so those were the 8 books under 200 pages that I think you should absolutely pick up. I've loved every single one of these. I would love to hear your thoughts about these books in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a like. I would really, really appreciate it. And subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you back, and I'll talk to you again next time. Bye!